Hey everybody, it's Sam with Mesa. Wanted to bring you a legal update on California rental market. What's going on with all of these laws and these judicial council rulings and executive orders and so on and so on and so on. It seems like things are just changing daily practically. It's a lot to keep track of. And then we also have pending legislation that's happening now and some ballot measures for the fall. So I want to cover that stuff, let you guys know in as succinct format as possible what's going on. Preface this all to say, I am not an attorney. I am a landlord myself. I've done the research on this. I've been following it very closely, and obviously also very concerned for the hundreds of landlords that we represent as a property management company. We want to make sure that all of our owners are in the best position possible, and that means being informed on what's going on. So it's also Friday, August 28th. And like I said, this stuff is changing all the time. That's one of the reasons we haven't done a ton of these videos, is because you make one and then you go check online and something else happened. So this may have changed by the time you watch it, but at least the historical part that I'm going to cover will still certainly be accurate, and as well as probably a lot of what we're talking about in the future stuff. So let's look back first to March and then kind of walk through everything that happened to where we are today, and then we'll look at what is coming down the pipeline, what's going to happen in the future. So everybody remembers March. It's COVID-19 hits and it's a pandemic, and Governor Newsom declares a state of emergency. And with that, he issues a flurry of executive orders, one of which is N-2820. And everyone thought that that was a statewide eviction moratorium, just, hey, no more evictions in the state of California. That is not true. It was simply giving local cities and counties the ability to exercise their police power and put their own eviction moratorium in place. So it was not a from the state thing. It just said, hey, you guys are allowed to do this. And just about everybody took him up on it. So it might as well have been statewide. But the county certainly put something in effect. And a lot of cities went and put even more restrictive rules in place. So no one really knew what was going on. It was really confusing. Then in April, the Judicial Council of California, and I don't know if you had really paid any attention to them before April, but suddenly they're a thing and they come out of nowhere. And if you've ever gotten a speeding ticket and there's a notice to appear that you get that's with that ticket, that is a form that is created by the Judicial Council. And apparently they also decide which courtrooms, which judge is going to be placed into on a given day. They're an administrative body and they made a law. Okay, so I guess we gotta deal with this now. So that comes out and that says no evictions, period, except for health and safety, entire state of California, and that is going to be extended until 90 days after the state of emergency ends. All right, that's very different than local eviction moratorium. So that happens. Those both had expiration dates that were pushed back several times, which kind of took us through the summer, and people were upset, understandably, by the unconstitutional Judicial Council ruling. That was Emergency Rule 1, by the way. And so there were some lawsuits that were filed. None of them have gone all the way through yet. So it's been challenged, but whether or not that actually does end up happening, it remains to be seen. However, in just a couple weeks ago, the Judicial Council voted 19-1 to rescind that order. And if you read what their proposal was on why they wanted to rescind it, they said the state of California is actively working on a couple of an assembly bill and a Senate bill particularly, and legislation. So they're essentially saying, I mean, my interpretation of it is they're worried about what would happen if they actually went to court over this. So let's just go ahead and pull it back. But, the state of California is going to do their own thing anyway, and everybody's probably going to be protected in that way, so we don't need to have this anymore. And you saw this, that is true also with like different cities, like Upland, for example, put eviction moratorium in place, threat of lawsuit by some landlord groups, and they just pulled it back. And why not? I mean, if you're covered by San Bernardino County or you're covered by the Judicial Council, then why even fight it? You can always just fall back on the guy who's standing behind you. So that's kind of what's happened there. So that has been rescinded as of September 1st. So next week, the Judicial Council ruling, gone. No 90-day thing, none of that. And again, that is because they seem rather confident that the state of California is going to put something else in place, and we'll talk about what that probably is going to be. However, Newsom's N-2820 is still in effect through the end of September 30th to be exact. And so local counties and cities can still have their moratoria. I'll cover which cities are still having some restrictions in effect that we particularly care about, that we manage in. So for Orange County, you got Anaheim, Apple Valley, Harupa Valley, Moreno Valley, Ontario, Rancho Cucamonga, Rialto, San Bernardino, and Upland. So some Riverside County in there, some San Bernardino County. And the Upland one was rescinded, so you don't have to worry about that. But those other cities, there's still restrictions in effect through the end of September. LA County is by far the most restrictive. You got to be really careful in LA County. If you were serving notices in certain cities, 3-day notices to pay or quit as an example, you could be looking at major fines, imprisonment. I mean, they really made it bad. So that is what was going on in the past, and that's kind of where we are with changes as soon as next week. In Riverside and San Bernardino County, it's looking pretty good. If you have a tenant that hasn't been paying rent, you're probably going to be able to do evictions in September. There's going to be a major court backlog, so you're probably going to want to act fast and get your stuff filed because so is everybody else. One thing that is worth talking about is we manage about 850 properties in this area, and we're 99% on-time rent collected. We've had a lot of good conversations with our tenants, and that's a lot of what this is. There's a lot of people that have been able to get benefits from the state or from even local stuff. The city of Fontana, as an example, had rental assistance for tenants. So sending that out to people, making sure that you have to make sure your tenants understand where they can get the help, because if they just say, hey, I can't pay, I lost my job, a lot of people have been truly affected by this and really are going through it. Others, unfortunately, are taking advantage of it, but those ones that really are truly affected by it, you got to try and give them as much information as possible so that they can help themselves, and in turn that will help you as a landlord so that you can go pay your mortgage and property taxes and insurance and property management fees maybe. So that's what's happened. Looking to the future, there's a couple of there's an Assembly bill, a Senate bill, and proposition that's going to be on the ballot. Now, if you can remember all the way back to 2018, there was Prop 10, which was a repeal of Costa-Hawkins, and we voted overwhelmingly against that to not put that into effect. And so the state of California said, well, we're going to put rent control in effect anyway. And AB 1482 happened. That was at the end of last year, and that put essentially rent control and at fault or no fault eviction protection in effect for any multifamily, or if you're a corporation that owns single family, you'd be affected as well. They put some sneaky stuff in there, like you had to notify your tenants. So they ended up passing that anyway. That was AB 1482. So hopefully you're in compliance with that. Then that was after Prop 10 was already voted down. Now coming up on the ballot, we got Prop 21, and Prop 21 is another attempt to repeal Costa-Hawkins. This time, instead of just going for everybody, they're going after if you're a landlord and you own more than 2 properties and they were built older than the last 14 years, then they want to be able to repeal Costa-Hawkins and put rent control on you. So a lot of our owners own multiple properties, and I would say probably most, if not all, of the ones who don't want to in the future. So this will, if it doesn't affect you, it probably will affect you. It's going to hurt affordable housing. It doesn't serve the purposes that they want it to serve, which is keeping the rents low and trying to control the market when probably just making it easier and less expensive to build in this state and less red tape would raise the incentive for people to build more affordable housing. And really what they're doing is they're making it harder to build new construction and more expensive, which just drives the price up. And so anytime you start raising the risk and lowering the return, people are going to exit the market. And that's likely what is happening and will continue to happen with stuff like that. Last thing on Prop 21 is it does also remove vacancy decontrol. So vacancy decontrol, and again, that's for the affected people who wouldn't be everybody, but vacancy decontrol means that if you have a rent-controlled tenant who's under market moves out, you can raise the rent back to market. Well, Prop 21 would seek to do away with that. So whatever your past tenant was paying, you would have a certain percentage that you could raise the rent to on your next tenant. So vacancy decontrol, also scary. So now let's talk about the Senate Bill 1410 and the Assembly Bill AB 1436. So Senate bill would essentially, without going into too many details, it would have the taxpayer pay for a lot of the unpaid rent that happened during COVID. Now AB 1436, this is a really scary one. This bill has the same author, David Chu. He's the one who wrote AB 1482, and this is coronavirus protection stuff. One thing that this bill does is it changes the 3-day notice. So the 3-day notice is a 2-option notice: pay rent or quit. So you can either give me the keys or you can pay the rent. So now it changes the 3-day notice to a 3-option notice: pay rent, give me the keys, or declare that you were affected by COVID. And it's not just that the tenant gets the 3-day and then has to write you a letter saying that, hey, I was affected by COVID. You, as a landlord, will have to take the 3-day notice, and you will have to include on there a form that allows them to declare that they've been affected by COVID. You have to give them the thing that all they have to do is sign it and give it back to you saying that they were affected by COVID, and now you are stuck. And that's for the covered period, which would be 90 days after the state of emergency ends, or April 1st, 2021, whichever one comes first. So if you have a renter who doesn't pay and you issue them that 3-day and then they fill it out and they give it back to you, it doesn't say anything about proof. It just says that you would then not be able to evict them or demand the rent during COVID. It also says that once you do get them to move out, if there's unpaid rent during the COVID period, and let's say you have a $2,500 security deposit, and they leave the house in good condition, but they just, they started paying rent eventually, but then they moved out, but there's some unpaid rent during the COVID affected period, which would be from March until either April 1st, 2021 or the 90 days after. You can't use the deposit for that unpaid rent. So there's a very good chance if you have a tenant that didn't pay during COVID and then they move out and you have the deposit, you're gonna have to give money back to a tenant who owes you money from COVID. That is crazy. That makes no sense, but that's what they want to do. And then it also would require that you give them 15 months to repay that debt. And this is probably after they've already left. They've already moved. They're already somewhere else. And now 15 months later, they're supposed to start paying back that COVID debt. So they're not forgiving the rent, but are you going to find them in 15 months? Do you have the time and the energy to do that? I mean, it would be bad. And it's not that it's bad because there's people who've been affected and they're going to take advantage of this. That's good. If there's people that have been affected, we should be helping them. You should be working with your tenants as much as possible. Again, there are a lot of programs out there that are helping them. There's a lot of state benefits. Make sure that they know about that, can get in touch with that, and can get the help themselves. But because there's no proof required on this stuff, you're going to get people that will take advantage of it. That's the big concern. That's what we're worried about. One last thing that I do want to talk about is the state of emergency. And this is true not just for COVID. This is also true, like right now there's a state of emergency for the wildfires that are happening. And it's not just that affects that county. A lot of times it's the entire state. And whenever you have that, there's price gouging laws. You can't raise the rent by more than 10%. Or you can't raise the price of any goods or services by more than 10%. So if you've got an under market tenant and you want to raise the rent by 10%, you can't. Now, if you're under AB 1482, then you can't do it by 5% plus CPI, which is usually 7 to 8%. So you're still restricted by that. But most people are not. If you're a single family landlord, you're most likely not under any form of rent control if you're in the areas that we manage in. So you are limited by that 10%. And that's not just on your existing tenant. That's on the price of goods and services as it stands. So if you have a tenant that moves out and they were under market and you want to raise the rent by 20% to get it back to market from what they were paying, you cannot do that. Keep in mind that is illegal right now. So you have to play by all the rules. The rules are constantly changing, and we can all stomp our feet and yell and scream and get mad about it, but don't cut corners. The penalties for violating this stuff are severe. They are continually coming after landlords and making this stuff harder and harder to be in compliance with. So you got to be paying attention. You got to be following this stuff. And play by the rules. That's all it is. They change the rules of the game, and you just got to play by the new rules. What can you do about stuff like this? I mean, it's hard to say, but you can't be the super nice landlord who keeps your tenants way under market all the time because I'm fine with the rental income that I have. But this can really affect you. I mean, if you get stuck, let's say you have some kind of a medical emergency or family emergency and you could really use the additional income, but you haven't been keeping your tenants up to market, you're not just going to be able to go, with that, in the back of your mind, it's like, I could always just go raise the rent. I could always kick them out and put new tenants in at market rate. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to get stuck. And so then the other option is, well, I'll just sell the property if that time ever comes. Well, now your property values are going to be significantly affected because what investor wants to buy a rent-controlled under-market property? I mean, if you are doing an income approach appraisal and you want to see how much is this property worth based on how much income it can produce, if it's limited in the income it can produce because you were Mr. Nice Guy for so long, didn't raise the rent ever, and now you've got your under-market tenants and people are going to value your property lower and be willing to pay less. So you just got to stay on top of it. You got to keep your tenants at market, or at least close to it. You need to be doing your rent increases on a regular basis. You need to keep your property safe and habitable. You are doing a wonderful thing by providing housing for people and maintaining a safe and habitable environment, and you should be able to earn a fair return on that. And again, if you don't keep up with this stuff, it will come back to get you. So keep up. That's the best thing that you can do as far as it comes with rent control and where to keep your rents. So hopefully that's helpful. That's kind of everything that's happened in the past, what we got looking forward to the future. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to give us a call. We'd love to talk to landlords that have questions about this. If you're currently a Mesa Properties client, you can rest assured that we're staying on top of all this for you and staying in compliance with all these laws, keeping you out of trouble, maintaining your properties to the highest possible standard, and staying in compliance with the laws that change like on a daily basis. I mean, it's almost like a full-time job just to monitor this stuff. So again, any questions, please give us a call. Otherwise, thanks for watching.